right, and here we go again. It's actually our last one for today, and we have a full slate tomorrow. So continue to check in, see all of these amazing presenters. I've had an amazing, wonderful day of learning all day today, hearing from educators, presenters from all over the globe, and for our partners, Avid. I just literally had someone walk up and say, "I love those headphones." And if you love those headphones, make sure to check out Avid's booth right here at FETC. It's been a great product. It has helped. Last night we did a podcast from the Hilton Lounge, and it worked out really great for us. So we're going to keep this train going, as it said right before the photos ended. Here we go, and we are here with Andrew. So Andrew, thanks for coming down, finding us here, and jumping on.
I'm so excited to be here at FETC for the opportunity to chat with you, and just really looking forward to a couple great days of learning and connecting with people.
Awesome. So for people who don't know you and your work, share the what you do right now in your journey into education.
Yeah, so I've had the good fortune to kind of dabble across a myriad of different roles, from being a classroom teacher for around 13 or 14 years. And during that time, I also spent 3 years working K-12 in a district with really innovative practices and trying to further the work of personalized learning there. And that has led me to have the opportunity to write on that topic, to go and share elsewhere at conferences and with districts all over the place with that. And for the last 3 years, I've actually served Nebraska, which is where I'm from, at the service agency level as our statewide digital learning coordinator. So get a chance to be a part of a lot of really cool conversations and see all the great people that are out there working on behalf of education and learning and learners in a lot of different capacities.
Awesome. So is this your first time here down in FETC?
Yeah, this is my first FETC session. session. I have not had a chance to be at the conference yet, but it's been great so far. So having a lot of fun.
Awesome. And you are presenting. You're going to be having a session on because teachers need more than a Jeans Day. So for those who are looking through and say, first of all, that is a super cool title. When is it, and what is going to be the focus?
So the session is tomorrow, and it'll be at 2:00. And that focus is a little bit of an offshoot from what I recently wrote about with the personalized learning piece, but it really seeks to find ways for us to think about how we can create the systems within which teachers can start to, and administrators alike, learn a little bit more about what they might need in terms of wellness strategies and support, and then make some suggestions too about how that school system can really support them in not only the learning, but then having the space and the time and the community to be able to practice that continuously.
So let's unpack all three of those things, because those are incredibly important. First, how do you provide space? It's like, what do you do with that?
I love the thought of letting that be something that the individual building kind of decides within their familiar rhythms. And so whether that be during PLC time, there's been conversations that I've had where administrators look to add maybe a wellness goal into your personal goal for the year and your maybe building goal for the year. And so it really affords numerous opportunities then for that to be revisited and have that just be part of the familiar rhythms. Because one more thing is always one more thing, right?
Exactly.
So trying to find ways to sort of seamlessly integrate that and then recognize the individual as well, so that there's, we're not going to do a one size fits all. Everybody sits down and does yoga together and suddenly we're well, right?
Right, exactly.
And so it does be reflective to that.
So the next one's still around time. I always hear, as you said, it's one more thing, or we have to look at this data, or we have to do recess duty, or insert things that teachers have to do. How do you incorporate that time of wellness into a school day?
Yeah, in talking with principals, what I have heard is that there are times where they might opt for an early release on a PD day, for example. So I think, that there's an opportunity of time where maybe a portion of that, instead of letting everyone leave an hour early, and of course you get some chores done before you pick up the kids and that kind of thing, but maybe instead being able to spend the first 30 minutes with some intentional opportunities to connect with your colleagues, to share about what's going on in your life, and your wellness, and the strategies you're employing to stay on top of things. And so again, it's in maybe designating a portion of PLC time on a consistent basis. And I even love the idea too that maybe it's on Wednesdays, once the building's about empty, but we haven't dismissed for the day yet, coming on the intercom and saying, make sure you take the next 15 minutes to take care of yourself. And I think sometimes teachers should need to hear that. They need to have permission within the workday to prioritize themselves, because they spend their entire time pouring their hearts out for others. And that's part of why we get into this profession, because we're inspired to do that. But to have somebody to sort of put some of those guardrails up so you can look out for you.
Awesome. And you talked about sharing. So you do a lot of sharing in your book, Empowered to Choose. So for those who have not had a chance to pick up the book, share what this book is about.
Yeah, Empowered to Choose really came from a lot of boots on the ground conversations that over time grew into a little bit of a familiar rhythm, I would say, to how to think about putting learners at the center, but also in a way that they feel comfortable and empowered to be able to drive those experiences. Because I say all the time, I don't think learner-centered is necessarily always learner-driven.
Well,
I
I
think
like that.
we lead with the opportunity for students to be at the center, but then once they get there, what they do, sometimes if it's unproductive or if it's less than desirable, right? When you give students choice and they pick what their friends pick or the easiest option, it can leave you feeling really defeated. And so it's thinking about how do we set them up for when they get those opportunities, which is hard enough to make space for that sometimes.
Absolutely.
Then being able to really take it and run with it.
So one of the things I really liked, I'm going to pull this card back up. Teaching learners how to learn is much more impactful than teaching them what to learn. So what went behind that quote? Like, what's your thinking with that?
Oh, I think there was a lag there. Sorry. With this particular one. Yeah, this is a little bit of that teach a person to fish analogy, right? Where it's hard as a student to push back. And I would have these conversations with my own students in class where they might say, well, when am I ever going to need this? When am I ever going to use calculus or Shakespeare or whatever it is that you might insert there? And if you're always working on not only learning more about the content, but also evolving as a learner yourself, there's always an application for where that's going to benefit you in the future. And it's fun to watch, particularly I find with this work that students who are maybe a C student, B student, who tend to play the game well, but maybe the strategies, the one size fits all doesn't always fit them. When they start to realize if they can tinker with what they're able to leverage in terms of resources or their approach and really own that process, it unlocks for them avenues to really thrive academically in ways that they hadn't thought possible before. And that's engagement, but it's also 21st century life skills and lifelong learning. And so I love all that.
And so you talked about being a learner. So you're down here in New Orleans, huge conference. How are you going to be a learner here? What are you going to go in with?
Yeah, well, I know about myself that I'm a verbal processor. So
okay.
I host podcasts also. And so it is fun to be able to just talk with people. And I find the hallway conversations are every bit as informative as the sessions. And that's not to diminish sessions, but it's to say that I love being able to sit down across the table from folks and chew on ideas and share the work that they're doing. And so I know that about myself. And so I make spaces for that. Yeah, I think that kind of presents itself in a number of different ways. I've developed a note-taking structure that works for me and the way that I tend to go about things. And it in a conference setting, though, I do appreciate the hallway conversations about as much as any.
I like it. So you mentioned your podcast. So if you go to Andrew's website, which is right down below his name, andreweaston.com, what are some of the things that you tackle on your podcast?
Yeah, so that I mentioned earlier, I work in Nebraska at the service agency level, but with all 17 service agencies statewide.
Wow.
And so our podcast is one that started to kind of target our education community in Nebraska, and that's still our chief focus for our audience. But we have speakers that would be at FETC from all over, obviously the U.S. and the world, really, that come in and we'll do sort of professional learning conversations. But we can also, through that avenue, share out new initiatives. When an act gets passed and it's going to change, some of the things that are going on in the classroom or course requirements, or it's just been an ideal place for us to communicate. And I've been really grateful when we invite people from outside of the state to speak because it gives us exposure to their message and certainly has led to some of those folks coming in and actually doing professional development with the great educators I get a chance to work with on a regular basis.
Awesome. So when you do this work, how do you empower students to have that voice? How do you empower them to make choices and be their own self-advocate?
Yeah, for students to be able to put themselves in a place where they can make a decision, they have to kind of be presented with a few things to help them see. I always try to advocate for them that they can put their own spin on it, right? So that they need to be able to identify their own strengths, preferences, interests, and needs. And so that's what that spin stands for, because I think sometimes, particularly with things like choice, for example, when we put the learner at the center, or say always play to your strength. Well, sometimes even in like sports and basketball, you got to go left-handed sometimes. If you're
Right.
just predominantly right, you're not balanced, which is where your needs can come in. And so it starts with helping them understand that those four, like playing to your strengths, playing to your preferences, your interests and needs, would allow you then to know the criteria for which you're tailoring that learning
Sure.
at that time. And if it's something that is, equal strengths, play to your preference, right? If you can incorporate your interest into something that is a strength, that's terrific, right? And so finding the best classroom practices to help learners know that about themselves. And then from there, it really becomes kind of scaffolding for choice. And I think that's the part that gets missed most often with this conversation is people, oh yeah, choice in the classroom. I know exactly what that looks like. The choice board, you get 3 options, you get 4 options. I think that's a great deviation from the norm. But I advocate for taking the deliberate time to practice the first of those options and the second and the third and the fourth ahead of making the decision. And in that process fosters your spin because sometimes we have yet to even be exposed to the thing that would be ideal for us, and so it's hard to be able to point at it and just make a decision for the very first time.
It sounds like it. So if you haven't had a chance to see Andrew's work, check out his website below. His Twitter handles on his name right there at Easton A1. Make sure to have an opportunity to check out his book and all the great work that's in there. And just the podcast, as we talked about, so much learning throughout. You talk a lot about building together. So the last question I always ask individuals, what does stronger together mean to you?
Stronger together means with, let's say, an open heart and willingness to listen and be vulnerable, that you would give of your talents and abilities and support to the best that you can for the betterment, not only of the person sitting across from you, but for the larger good. And so, like that's what stronger together is. It's in the individual relationship that can then compound over your entire sphere of influence.
Awesome. Well, it is great to meet you. I can't wait to dig more into the content, the book. And if you're here at FETC and want to grab a copy of the book, Andrew's going to be in the exhibit hall tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Make sure to head down there if they're the meet the author time. As I said, visit his site, check in with him. It is great to meet you. And I hope you have, as you said, this is your first time?
Yeah.
All right. Well, have an awesome first time at FETC.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Thanks. We'll talk soon.